Hello and welcome to West Bloomfield 911. I'm Officer Rick, and on behalf of the men and women of the West Bloomfield Police Department, once again, welcome to the show. Today's guest is Mr. Rob Glass. He's the Superintendent of the Bloomfield Hills Schools. We're glad to have you on the show.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming. Now, don't run away, but we're going to highlight a fellow police officer, okay?
Sounds good.
Folks, take a look at your screen and you will see the smiling face of Police Officer Christopher T. Pelkey. Now, Chris is assigned to the Road Patrol, and he's a relatively newcomer to West Bloomfield. He's one of the gang of four, as I like to call them. 4 officers that I think are some of the best officers we've hired over recent years, and he is the third of the 4 that we've highlighted. He comes to us from he is actually a Michigan boy, but he comes with some experience with the Los Angeles Police Department out in California. So even though he's only been here since August and has 9 months in West Bloomfield, he actually has 6 years of experience. He served from LAPD from May 2007 to August of 2014. And Chris, we're glad you decided to come back home. He, like the other guys ahead of him, that part of this big 4, he loves pizza. I know you guys must have all gotten together when we talked about this. He loves pizza, and his favorite books are action and spy books by Jonathan Mulberry. And once again, like the other guys, favorite movies are action movies. I think they're all cut out of the same mold. His favorite music, hard rock. And when I asked him about accomplishments and hobbies, he said hanging out with his 2 kids. And also, he's very proud of the fact that he was able to complete the police academy for the Los Angeles Police Department, which is 7 months long. Man, I thought our academy was long. We do about 4 months, so they do an extra 3. So, right to be proud of that, Chris. And I know you said you're glad to be back home, but I need to talk to you and find out if your wife, who was born in California, is glad to be here after this horrendous winter we just had. When I asked him about his favorite quote, he picked another famous Michigander, Mr. Henry Ford, the original Henry Ford. If you think you can do a thing or think you can't do a thing, you're right. Well, Henry was right, and Chris, you're right as well. So, Chris, we thank you for your time and service in LA. We're glad you're back home. Hope you have a long and illustrious career here in West Bloomfield. Now, folks, today we are going to not do a safety tip, but right now we're going to talk about a dumb criminal. I always like these guys. I can't believe they exist, but they keep us employed. This one's out in California. Chris, you must have left her back there. This is a California woman who's facing nearly 5 years in prison for forging drug prescriptions. She brought to court a doctor's note suggesting that her case should be postponed for medical reasons. Now, believe it or not, the request was denied. Can you guess why, Rob?
I have no idea why.
The note from the doctor was also a forgery. So, you know, we're glad this woman's in California. Hope she stays there. We don't need her here in Michigan. So, we'll be right back with Rob Glass, Superintendent of Bloomfield Hills Schools. We're going to talk about all the exciting things that are going on in that school district. So stay tuned. Don't leave us. Come on back.
You're watching West Bloomfield 911 on Civic Center TV, a service of the Greater West Bloomfield Cable Communications Commission. For more information or to watch episodes on demand, visit civiccentertv.com/WB911. Civic Center TV, television that's close to home.
After the tragic loss of an officer in the line of duty, Michigan Concerns of Police Survivors provides support to surviving law enforcement, families, and coworkers. To learn more about MyCops and upcoming events, or for more information on how you can help, visit mycops.org or call 877-464-2677.
Hello, and we're back to West Bloomfield 911 with our very special guest, Mr. Rob Glass. Rob, how are you?
I'm well.
Good. Glad you're here. Yes, I am. And I'm glad you're able to join us because we kind of have a connection.
Yeah, we do.
You guys have been kind enough and allowed me to come into your schools.
You've been there a lot, and everybody appreciates it. We certainly love having you there.
Well, thank you. And unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but West Bloomfield has, I think, 7 or 8 school districts, and yours is one of them. So what schools from the Bloomfield Hills School District are in West Bloomfield? Why don't you talk
We would
about that a
have
little bit?
Lone Pine, and also we would have what was Pine Lake,
Right.
which is still open a little bit. We have one program running in there. And then West Hills Middle School.
Right.
So those are the three.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the school that I get to work in with
Right.
Andy Geniak, and
Yeah.
so I have a lot of fun there.
Yeah, it was great to see you over there for our exhibition night that we had. If you
Yes.
we got to talk quite a bit.
Absolutely.
That was
Why
great.
don't you talk about some of the stuff that the kids are doing there and what's going on in the Bloomfield Hills schools, and why don't you start with exhibition night and tell the
Sure.
people what that's about?
Sure. Well, exhibition night is really part of it's a culminating experience from all the work we do with International Baccalaureate. So we're a pre-K 12 International Baccalaureate school, and the International Baccalaureate is a special program. It started out as foreign service schools for diplomats and that sort of thing. And so it's a worldwide network of schools that kind of run on an international standard curriculum. And what happens is that they start in elementary school with this kind of, it's a global outlook on learning,
Okay.
and puts a lot of meaning into the learning. You know, why am I here? Who am I? What am I doing? What's my role here in as a learner in the big picture? And so they culminate that with a 5th grade project that is just dynamite, and they
Yes,
work
it
on
was.
it for months.
Yes.
And they pick a research project topic, and then they research that topic, and it's usually involves some kind of action, maybe cleaning up the Rouge River, or maybe looking at a big global issue and trying to take some action locally.
Right.
Then they report on that, and they collect data, they do research, they give the presentation, they make recommendations, and sometimes they actually do stuff that
Right.
helps the community directly. So.
Yeah.
We think it's great, and when they have those exhibition nights, they prepare for them for weeks and months, and so they're really good.
Well, I know I was impressed.
Yeah.
And that's not the first one I've been to, but I'll tell you what, the kids really get into it, and it's amazing what they do over there.
I
and
think their
they're a lot of
presentation
talented
skills-
kids.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, it makes you feel good about the future.
It does.
You know?
It does. When you see the way that they present and how seriously they take their work,
Right.
gives you hope for the future for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, what else is going on in the Bloomfield Hills schools that I know you guys have a lot of programs. Your schools are highly regarded. So why don't you tell me a little bit about what's going on there?
Sure. Well, we've been a great school district for forever. I think one of the things that we're trying to do, though, is never stop evolving, never stop growing, never stop pushing the envelope. So we've been working around, first of all, there's this concept of our mission, which is to really be a world-class school district. And we try to focus on helping the students be architects of their own futures, to take responsibility for themselves for learning, not just because someone told them what they need to do. And so we've got these guiding principles we put into place, and there are 10 of them, and they just kind of paint a picture for what we want teaching and learning to look like. And so part of it is that relationships are really important.
Sure.
And that we want students to deeply own their learning, and we want students to take risks and sometimes fail and then learn from the failure.
Right.
And those kind of things. And so we've been building our curriculum or reshaping our curriculum around that, and it's been really fun. Of course, we have the high school going up too,
Sure.
and that's really exciting.
Well, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Well, the high school is going to be, we obviously had a controversy for a lot of years
Yes.
about slightly declining enrollment over the years and needing to get more efficient with 2 older buildings. And so after putting several proposals out there to the voters approved a bond issue to consolidate both high schools on the Andover site. So they've torn most of the old Andover down and are rebuilding a new building that's larger on that same site and renovating part of the building that's still there.
Okay.
So it's coming along. It's going to be finished in about a year and a half in the
Okay.
fall of 2015. Temporarily, all of our 9th through 12th graders are really split on 2 campus buildings. The old Lahser holds 10, 11, and 12. Hickory Grove, right down the street, holds the 9th graders. But the building's going to be designed a little differently. It's going to be more of a learning community-based kind of thing, so that the students will be grouped for at least parts of their day in smaller teams.
Okay.
And it'll have more informal learning spaces, less formal, straight
Rigid
hauways
classrooms,
with
okay.
classrooms. Yeah, that it'll be flexible, so you can do a lot of different things inside.
Well, now you've got some of these, well, I don't know if they're unusual ideas, but certainly different than when I was going to school.
Yeah, me too.
Now, how did you guys come about deciding that these are the ideas that we want to put into our students, and this is the best learning environment? Because
Yeah.
obviously, as you're a superintendent a particular group, and we have other,
Right.
very well-regarded schools, but everyone does something a little different. What was the guiding feature, the thought behind this is why we wanted to do this?
We did a lot of research, and we had some consultants who did the design for us, help us look at the schools of the future around the world that are doing some of the more progressive things.
Okay.
And pretty much what we determined is that nowadays everybody's working in teams, and we think that the learning that we want to move to is more project-based, so you need more flexible spaces. And so if you look at the universities and design schools that are out there, and in colleges and workplaces, you're seeing workspaces that allow for more groups and more collaboration. So
Right.
we thought, well, how do we design some space, because we don't know what learning is going to be like in 50 years.
Right.
If it's a 50-year building, we want to make sure that we can do everything from the traditional to the really out of the box in one place and have the flexibility to do that. So flexibility was the guiding idea there.
Okay.
Now,
every student is different, though, and some students are destined to go to college.
right.
And not that obviously I have a degree, and I know you're working on your doctorate as well,
I
correct?
am, yes.
So education certainly is important, but I also think that education takes many forms, and some students may not end up in a university. They may end up, and I don't see anything wrong with a student ending up in a good trade school if that's where their talents and their interests take them. So how do you focus on the students with different needs or different interests? Because not everybody's destined for college.
Boy, that's really, really true. We have a couple different avenues. Even right now, we have the Oakland technical campuses that we send students to, and the facilities are phenomenal. Whether it's heating, cooling, HVAC stuff, or whether it's auto technicians, or whether it's home building, engineering, all kinds of things can be accomplished. And so we send students for up to half of their day there,
Okay.
if they would like to go, and that's an opportunity that they have always had and continue to have. In the new building at the high school, we'll also have an area, we're calling it our STEM area or STEAM area. That stands for science, technology, engineering, math.
Okay.
And the STEAM is when you include the arts in it.
Oh, arts.
So we've got areas that are really flexible where you can do modeling, 3D modeling with, so from CAD, say, right through to computer design, 3D modeling.
Right.
And then prototype and test and design. So these are quasi shop spaces, but they're also classroom spaces right nearby. So you
Sure.
kind of have this mix of. So what we wanted was to be able to have a place to accomplish any of that we want to within the regular day.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be about just sitting in paper and
Yes.
digital. It can be about spaces where it's okay to get messy, where it's okay to leave projects in a half-done state until they can be completed,
Right.
and where you can do all of that. So
Right.
we're thinking that this will create more of that environment. If you've ever been to a first robotics championship, it is one of the neatest things.
bet.
We're trying to create an environment like that where people get excited about designing stuff, building stuff, doing stuff, and it becomes a team effort. And the math course and the all the sciences are woven right into it.
Yeah.
And hopefully, because you're competing, oftentimes you get pretty excited about how well your robot or your project stacks up against others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question. This might be off the beaten path a little bit, but you're taking some ideas about what people are doing around the world and that. And again, anyone can make a statistic, say what they want.
You're right.
What's the old saying that statistics lie and liars lose statistics?
Yeah,
But
right.
I heard something a few weeks ago on the radio where they said that our college students are so far behind college students in other countries that even the janitor, and that was kind of what they used, the janitor's son in some Southeast Asian countries are doing better than our children of the upper crust here in this country. Do you really think that that's totally true, or because you guys are doing some phenomenal stuff, and based on some of the stuff I've seen with some of these fifth graders, they're doing some great stuff.
Yeah, they are.
So, is it that American education is getting a bad rap? Is that kind of the thing nowadays, or are we just in a transition period?
I think it's getting a bad rap, and it's not largely justified. I think our American students, first of all, our American universities are the envy of the world. I have, right now there are large numbers of students from other countries who want to be in our universities. So we have the best universities in the world. we have a lot of students who go to those universities, and you know, they don't all matriculate through and graduate. You know, some of them do find other pathways, and I think that's just part of learning and growing.
Right.
So I think this hyper focus on college and career readiness is a little misplaced. I think that it's really about finding your place. And so now a lot of the K-12 schools right now, we have something going on that's a little different than some of the other countries. You know, we educate everyone. And some of these other countries, when they're comparing the numbers, are not necessarily measuring, you know, everyone on these tests.
That's true.
Having said that, not every school district is doing terrific in the United States.
Sure.
And I think there is some of that we have to be concerned about.
Right.
So it's well-founded. You know, you want everyone to do well. And we're not always, I think as a country, we're not getting our educational system to the point where everyone or most everyone is performing at a high level. So it is an apples and oranges conversation a little bit. I think what we can do is stay focused on making sure that every individual student is really challenged, is really engaged, and their education is really meaningful to them, and that we are coaching them to really high levels of achievement, and not just bookwork achievement, but stuff that's going to carry them on. They'll remember the rest of their lives.
Right.
We know we remember the stuff out of school that was probably don't remember what we took on our 8th grade geometry, or, you know, math test.
Oh, I do.
You do. I'm impressed because I don't.
Well, I remember I failed. So no, you're right. You're right.
But you know, but what matters are some of those experiences where you did something, you made something, your teacher inspired you, you had a voice, you had something special going on. That stuff you'll never forget. Sometimes it's a field trip. You know, sometimes it's an art project or whatever. So, you know, I think that's where we have to focus. I'm a little concerned that as a nation we've focused on standards and accountability, and we're just looking at all these test scores and we're sorting in the same.
That kind of concerns me.
It concerns me. I think you need a dipstick. You need to know how you're doing, basically, and if you need to improve, that tells you that you need to improve a little bit. But what we really need to be focused on is kind of that personal relationship with the teacher and the student at the school, and the parents involved, and everybody can work together to really get students to do well when that happens.
It seems to me that sometimes we're focused too much on teaching children how to pass a test, rather than, you know, whether it be MEP or whatever, rather than learning.
Exactly.
And now let me ask you, what, as I think to a certain extent teachers have gotten a bad rap over the last few years, and I'm not going to say that every teacher I ever had in school was wonderful, but for the most part, I remember my teachers fondly, most of them. And in particular, I'll never forget my 6th grade teacher, Mrs. Thelma Wright. And you know, when I think of someone that was just at the pinnacle of what a teacher should be, I always think of her.
That's her.
And but I think most of the other teachers were, some were close to her, some were not as good as her. But for the most part, not that I always did great in school, but that was more my fault than their fault. But you know, I loved 5th grade, and that's why I spent 4 years there. But
couldn't bring yourself to
couldn't leave. But I think to a certain extent, some teachers have gotten a bad rap, and that's the reason for failing scores and that. But we don't live, you know, teaching isn't in a vacuum, and you get a lot of the stuff that kids bring to school with them, the baggage they bring, whether it be, you know, broken homes, drug addiction, whatever. How do you deal with that? I mean, you're asked to do a lot more as an educator than I think teachers were when I was growing up.
Absolutely they are. And I think teachers are getting a bad rap. You know, they're basically, it's a vicious cycle we're in right now as a nation. There is research that says, you know, the better your teacher is, if you get locked into a cycle with a really good or a really bad teacher, it's going to affect you for years, and I agree with that. But so our focus needs to be on how we get all of our teachers to be really, really good performers. And just like any profession, you're going to have some rock stars, and you're going to have a lot of people in the middle, and you're going to have a few that, you know, aren't doing real well and shouldn't be there. And our job is to make sure that we coach them up or coach them out. And we have very few of those people.
Can I use that phrase?
Sure,
I love that.
And I think that the real work is to get everybody to get better all the time, you know, and we've got some good initiatives at the state level now with evaluation systems. We got a little more focus on what are the ingredients that make a good teacher? How do we create structures where they can help each other, not just work in isolation? Again, that teamwork idea. So we've got some good ways of doing that. It's just not a fast and super easy thing to do, but it can be done.
Nothing changes overnight.
Yeah, and I think when you just say, well, and this is the part I'm worried about. So they've now as part of this improving teacher quality initiative, they're tying teacher evaluations to test scores. So if I don't make a certain amount of growth with a certain number of my students, then it goes on my evaluation. It might count for up to 40% of my evaluation.
Yeah.
And when that starts to happen, what am I going to do as a teacher? I am going to start to teach to the test because I'm worried about my job.
Right.
And when I teach to the test, I think something slips in the quality, and they might do okay on that test, but then again, they might forget all of it too, and it becomes really, you're working out of fear as a teacher. You're not working out of inspiration.
Now let me ask you, when you use that as a measuring stick too, how do they distinguish the difference between, let's say, a teacher who is in a privileged or a high achieving class
Right.
with high achieving students,
Right.
and a teacher who's in a environment where the students aren't achieving,
Right.
and not necessarily due to the teacher's fault, but maybe their home environment and the community environment that they're in. How do they distinguish the difference
Well, I
there?
think those are the things that are really tough to figure out. I mean, theoretically, you could make a case that our most talented teachers, if you will, the ones who seem to consistently get the most results, ought to be working with the more challenging groups of students. But when you get to high school, you have certifications. You're only certified in certain areas, and so you can't just move people everywhere. But I think that is the ongoing challenge. How do you how about art teachers, and how about phys ed teachers, and how about speech teachers and special needs teachers? They all have a different environment they're functioning in, and
Right.
it's tough to measure them all in the same way. And I
Right.
think what we're going to find is it is not as easy to measure as the legislators seem to have thought when they put some of these things together about how we do that. So what we try to do is we try to focus on individual growth, and I think any good school district does. You talk about, what are you trying to accomplish this year? How are you going to move all your students up, from where they are, up at least 1 year's growth, or making some good gains. And then we have these shorter cycle, tests or assessments we use. So that's the stuff that feedback, how am I doing this week, this month?
Right.
Instead of how did I do at the end of the year? Because
Yeah.
by then, you've lost a lot of time.
Right.
But if so we're trying to focus on teacher feedback, student feedback that's pretty much in real time, so they can make the adjustments along the way. And when we do that, I think that's our best shot at making a difference there.
Well, let me ask you, from a teacher standpoint, how important are the parents to the child's success?
Huge, huge. I mean, we're very fortunate in Bloomfield Hills and in West Bloomfield. I know that, our parents already have a mindset instilled in their students that they're going to achieve.
Yes.
And they do a great job bringing them to us that way.
I didn't grow up out in this area, though I've been out here for now almost 25 years. But I talked to a teacher, and I can't remember what district she was in, but she was from another area in Detroit, more of a blue-collar area. And we were kind of comparing notes because we came from the same part of town. And the one thing, there were things that she liked about the other area better than out here, but the one thing she said, the thing I like about being out here is education is a priority. She said we're in the areas where we had come from, it wasn't necessarily the same thing. That a lot of them were blue collar, which I came from blue collar, so I'm not criticizing blue collar people. But to some of those folks, it was, well, I didn't have college. I don't see why my kid needs college. Well, that's two different environments now.
I've read a study recently, or an article, that suggested that when you have that kind of expectation, it makes a difference. It's not always about the micromanaging along the way that the parents do. Sometimes that's actually counterproductive when some parents do that. But it's that expectation. I expect that you're going to do great things. I expect that you're going to continue your education. You're always going to learn. That parents may say you're going to college, or whatever it is. It makes a big difference.
Yeah. Well, I know we did that with our kids, and fortunately, all of them got their undergrad anyway. And my youngest daughter's in MSU School of Veterinary Medicine right now.
Wow,
so so I'm very proud of her.
That's great.
Thank you. But my son said to me one time, and he was a man now, so I really had no control over him, or limited control.
Right.
And I said something about college, and he said to me, well, Dad, we didn't have a choice. Now, really, he did, but because my wife and I kept saying, you will go to school, you don't have a choice, it was instilled in him.
Exactly.
He didn't have a choice.
He didn't. He internalized
So,
it.
yeah, so he did go get his degree from Wayne State, and I'm very proud of him
You know,
for
you
it.
should be.
Yeah,
That's
so,
great.
yeah.
It's always great when our kids do well.
Right. Now, we only have a couple minutes left, Bob, and I was looking at your bio, and you started out in this area and then went away to Dexter and elsewhere and then come back. So this is home for you.
It is, yeah.
So you have an emotional vested interest.
Right.
What do you see, or what do you want to tell the folks about the Bloomfield schools that you think it's important for them to know?
Well, I think I want them to know that we're really about students first, that we're about always learning and growing and pushing the envelope, and we're about an invested education and an emotional investment in the education. And we're excited about our future in terms of our facilities, in terms of our programs, so we think it's a great place to be. We think, I know that the schools are a great part of what makes a great community. They're
Sure.
a huge part of it, just as is law enforcement, civic,
That's right.
civic services. We all work together. I think that's what makes this area a great area to raise a family, to live in, to retire in, to stay in.
Absolutely.
And so I think we got a great thing going on here, and we love our partnership, in this community, and we're going to keep the property values and do our part to keep the investment high,
Right.
and be a sought-after place to live.
Well, you're certainly doing a great job, and I can attest to that, and I'm very thankful that you allow me to come into your schools. And but right now, we're running out of time. We want to memorialize a fallen officer.
Let's do that.
Okay, and we appreciate you coming to our May 2nd memorial, by the
Wouldn't
way.
miss it.
Folks, if you would, please remember in your thoughts and in your prayers Officer Timothy Allen Huffman of the Arizona Department of Public Safety, who was killed in the line of duty on May 6, 2013. Officer Huffman was killed when his patrol car was struck by a tractor trailer in I-8 near Dayton, Arizona. He and other officers were attempting to shut down a lane of traffic while investigating another car crash. He was sitting in his patrol car doing a report, and another officer was trying to clear a lane of traffic for fire department vehicles when a tractor trailer disregarded that other officer. In fact, almost hit that officer. He had to jump out of the way or he would have been killed. That tractor trailer at full speed struck the rear end of Officer Huffman's vehicle and pushed his car into 3 other vehicles. Officer Huffman died at the scene, succumbed to his injuries there. That other driver is now facing a second-degree murder charge. Now, this is a great American hero. Not only did he serve the great state of Arizona as a police officer, but he was also a member of the Arizona Army National Guard. So we want to thank him for serving our country as well as his community. And I want to tell you that I did get to meet his family coming back from Police Week in Washington, D.C. They're lovely people, and they were very grateful for all the affection shown by the people of Arizona and New Mexico, where Timothy was buried, and the people of Michigan. So please remember him in your thoughts and your prayers, and his family and his colleagues in the Arizona Department of Public Safety. He is a son of Michigan, and we say, brother, your memory will never be forgotten. Folks, once again, I want to thank you for watching the show. I want to thank our special guest, Mr. Rob Glass, the superintendent of the Bloomfield Hills Schools. And I want to thank you for watching. And please remember, take care of each other, be good to each other. Tomorrow is promised to no one. And if you don't catch us on the telly, you can catch us on civiccentertv.com. And on behalf of Chief Mike Patton, the men and women of the West Bloomfield Police Department, thank you for watching. We'll see you again on West Bloomfield 911. Thank you, Ron.